I think this is a very good recommendation, and I think the fundamental issue with councils is that they're quite happy to increase expenditure or not and jump up and down about that, but when it comes to reducing expenditure, they get very excited. And 6 months ago on that issue, I asked Mr. Drury for some information on vehicles and accommodation and flying and things, and I think there's a very good point. $650,000 a year on vehicles, that was last year. I don't see any problem with knocking $50,000 or $100,000 off that and saying to the staff, it fits in with our carbon footprint attempts. I brought this up 2 years ago and it just flew into nowhere. There's $100,000 in there that we can make an attempt to do. And again, I mentioned the fact that every time I come here I count the vehicles, and as we speak there's 17, 18 vehicles, and again I got treated as a pariah for bringing this up. But I mean, it just seems very simple logic to me that if you've got between 17 and 30 vehicles sitting in the car park not being used, there is some scope for economics. So along the lines of what you're trying to reduce things, I think it's part of our mandate to reduce our carbon footprint, and knocking $100,000 off the vehicle expenses, or even 50 as a start, would be a start. We spend, our travel budget is $186,000. I'd knock a proportion of that, and our expenditure on legal fees is $250,000. And I think there's huge scope there for reduction, and part of that reduction should be used to put in a very efficient Skyping system like Johnny Bostock has, which he claimed paid for itself in 6 months. So again, I totally support what Councillor Douglas is saying. I note in the 18 years I've been in this business, cutting expenditure is a sin. Any suggestion that we're not super efficient and wonderful is treated as heresy. And I think this is a good opportunity to try and turn the ship slightly around. And I absolutely can't see that the $180,000 on cars could not be trimmed by 5-10%. And again, the travel in this age of computers and Skype and the internet, I don't really see that we need to spend $186,000 a year on travel. And I also am somewhat surprised that every time I turn around and something slightly controversial comes up, we've got a legal opinion, and we end up spending $240,000 in the 11-12 year, and so do the other councils. And again, going back to the other debate we have on shared services, I know that CHB spend about $100,000 a year, so there'd be $500,000 or $1 million spent on lawyers, and there are savings made there. So everything to me points in the direction that we could actually look at our expenditure and do something about it. And as I say, for how many years? 18 years now. That debate's never really been held, as my experience, and it's time it was.
Take an opportunity to speak. I appreciate the intention of this, and it is unfortunate that Councillor only arrived yesterday and we haven't had a chance to massage this through our normal AP process, which starts in November, where we look at the services we provide, we look at the costs that they're going to incur, we tell our team to go back and sharpen the pencil, which they invariably do. The challenge I see ultimately, I suggest this is a fantastic opportunity for the next financial round, but to expect the team on my left to go away and in 2 days find that saving, 2 weeks rather, because let's not fool ourselves, we do have to come back and make a decision on the 26th of June as to what the rate will be to the good people of Hawke's Bay. So while the idea is has a lot of merit, the intention is fantastic, and I suggest achievable ultimately, but not in the next 2 weeks. We haven't got a hope of doing it. It would be also churlish to suggest that going to that particular level on those particular parameters is accurate when we have to provide a service to our people, and those services get expensive. And the Burl stuff that we the increase of 3.2 that we use as our guide is accurate because these things cost money. So we either fine-tune, as has been suggested, and I'm sure that is available to be done. Once the fine-tuning is done, though, the reality is unless we change our service delivery, modify, reduce, whatever it might be, ultimately we're going to run up against the same issue. So while I respect and have enjoyed the discussion, I will not be supporting this motion.
Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Dick.
I'll reserve my position till the end of the debate, but I'd just make the point that, you know, if you make comparisons of rate increases over a period of time compared to cost of living increases, that is simplistic, and it ignores cost drivers like the unfunded mandates that we continually get landed with, like clean heat, like water quality standards. In other words, you know, we're asked, or we're required by government, with support from generally people, because they want the same outcomes when it comes to environmental issues, we're required to do more, and it costs more. So you just can't ignore that. Unfortunately, the blame for the cost implication doesn't rest where it should be. It rests on us rather than central government.
Other speakers wish to sum up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can I tell you about my business? And many of you are in business.
Microphone, please. Sorry, we missed that.
Apologise. Can I tell you about my business?
Your fantastic speech before was not recorded because we didn't have the microphone.
It's probably a good idea. It's lost forever. I'm summing up, yes. Because some of the points made here about whether people can pay for rates and so on in terms of, say, unfunded mandates, which was raised. In a business sense, if you've got a cost that hits you, and businesses do get regulatory costs, you can't put your prices up. And you can't find extra money, so you change your way you do business. We all know that. So why are councils different when they get an unfunded mandate or anything else? And I acknowledge that happens. The other question, and Mr. Chairman, you raised, and it's up to a point true, if I, and you said it much more delicately than this, but because I'm new and hadn't been here in October, I didn't realise or didn't take part in that hard work that went on then. The law is very clear. The Local Government Act says the annual plan is councillors hear every single item de novo. In law, you can change every single word. And you're obliged to listen and think about it as if you will. And I can even give you, if I can recall the exact part of the Act, it'll come to me in a moment. And so you can change everything, without exception, including the rate. So it really, in a sense, doesn't matter. If you heard a better argument or a better reason, you can change everything. And indeed, you must look at it as if you will. Because if you don't, you're premeditation and you shouldn't be here. The law is very clear. I've been through court cases on it. So I think it has to be a discipline that has to happen now as much as it happened back in October, and that would be my submission. Thank you.
Fair enough. Put that motion in. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, no. I think we might have to show our hands. All those in favour? Favour of this motion. Which is bring the rate. 2, 3, 4, 5 against. Carried. Right.
Probably going to mean you're going to have to schedule another meeting, Mr. Chairman.
When?
Before that day.
Before the 26th of this month.
Yeah.
Well, you have put us in a conundrum, but no, let's move on. We've made our decision.
I think perhaps I could make comment if that's what the council wants, we'll do it with services. costs, legal costs, which are a function of doing business. We'll give you a list of services, and the services will be the things that we'll look at in terms of reducing the cost structure.
Right. Interesting couple of weeks pending. Okay. Regional resources, page 29. Any questions in regard to regional resources? Someone happy to move? Any staff comment? Someone happy to move that?
Hang on just a second, sorry, just a minute.
I'm just unsure of process now because if we make recommendations not to make any changes, that might be in fact affected by changes that we're asking to make to the rate.
But we'll be making that change at the final wash up, right?
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, can I just ask for clarification?
Microphone.
Just for clarification, because we have set the staff a task.
Undoable task, basically.
Hey?
Doable task in 2 weeks.
A task. I'm not sure whether I would have voted for it if I knew that. Yeah, I have. Yeah, and that's fine. But the question I want to ask is, are there any unfunded mandates that affect the level of rates proposed for next year? Because I believe they should be taken into account, in the same way as growth should be taken into account. Just think about it.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'm a bit challenged on growth, and I'll have to talk to Councillor Douglas about what he means by growth. But unfunded mandates, off the top of my head, public transport, there's some expansions in public transport which is subject to additional rates, whether you could call them unfunded mandates. They're funded through rates and they seek their level depending on the level of service.
These are issues for these guys to deal with. No doubt we'll see it back. Let's move on. We've still got an annual plan to finish. Page 29, regional resources.
A question, cadmium, is that's an issue in the rural sector? Is that something we should be worried about, or is it? Is there any staff information on that?
We'd need Mr. Maxwell here to talk to us about that.
So, I mean, can that be dealt with at some stage? Later?
It is part of an ongoing process.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, that answers my question. Thank you.
We certainly are aware of it. Someone happy to move? You happy to move? You happy to second, Councillor Rose? Anyone wish to speak? Put that motion, and all those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, no. Carried. Page 31, regional sports park application for funding.
Mr.
Councillor Curtin.
Can I, this is probably one where we need to canvass the direction of travel in terms of perhaps withdrawing the offer.
So your question is on what basis? My question to you is on what basis?
Well, my question is, are we in a position to allocate this resource given the lack of compliance with the conditions we placed last year on the funding?
Lack of compliance. The reality is they're not in a position to make that final determination yet. It wasn't time bound in my memory, but I could ask for clarification on that.
Mr. Chairman, I mean, I can understand where that question is coming from, but if you look at the 3 projects which you allocated this fund to last year, the Wairoa Community Centre upgrade, Tamata Park Visitor Centre and hockey facilities, none of them are actually ready to progress just yet. they're all working towards that, and I think for major projects there was a decision made not to make them necessarily time-bound, but at least not to a particular financial year. Mr McIntosh did indicate yesterday that he would be coming back to Council soon, and he was confident that he would be back to Council soon with the business case that would address the recommendation or the resolution that you passed last year about an agreed and acceptable plan between all the listed parties. And I think that we actually just have to give them the benefit of that additional time to do that. There's obviously some contractual issues that they're trying to tie up in relation to the financial viability of the facility, and then can confirm with the various parties.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I wonder whether I could foreshadow. Well, I'd like to move the recommendation that receive the submission, and has made provision for the funding to be carried forward. And the funds be no longer available after the 30th of September 2013, or some wording like that.